These are the sounds coming from one of the noisiest and most politically charged streets, Rustaveli Avenue. The protest has many goals, but to put it simply, Georgia is still fighting for a European future. Georgia's domestic political situation has turned upside down. From the passing of the infamous Russian law and an attempt to impeach President Salome Zurabishvili to the adoption of new controversial legislation, presidential elections and ongoing protests met with the police suppression. While Georgian authorities are adopting authoritarian-style practices, a parallel trend has emerged, an era of mass deportations. According to data published by Georgia in 2024, 430 foreign nationals have been deported from the country in that year alone, a 125% increase from the previous year's 190 deportations. While the trend isn't entirely new, the sharp rise in numbers has raised alarm among foreign journalists and activists who fled their own countries due to repression and chose Georgia as a safer alternative. In the first 3 months of 2025 alone, 219 people have been already deported, more than the entire number of deportations in 2023. Despite these statistics, Anya August, a coordinator of the feminist anti-war resistance and a journalist at an LGBT propaganda media outlet, says she never expected to face the issue of deportation when she moved to Georgia.
The vibe then was that Georgia and Russia was very, in the conflict. And after the war and so on, I didn't know a lot about Georgian politics at this time, but I didn't see any of this coming. And when they got this foreign agent law, I thought, okay, I guess I will have to move on in some other foreign country at some point, because when it starts, you just know that it will follow and follow and follow if, revolution won't happen or something.
Anya came to Georgia for love. She had fallen for one of her colleagues who had been living here for a while.
Well, I got in love. And with one of my colleagues. And I visited Georgia just to visit my colleagues who lived here for some time. And when I went here, I knew I will love Tbilisi. And also, I met one of my colleagues, and we were quick in love, as women tend to. There are a lot of jokes from lesbians moving in at the second time. And actually, this was what happened, because she said you can move in with me if you want. I said, well, I will.
After moving to Tbilisi, Anya tried to continue her activism, also somewhat locally. She recalls joining the early stages of the protests.
Well, I went to the protests when they happened, when I could. But I think this is pretty much what I did at local level, because I was very burnt out, very depressed, and I had one thing I could do. And I didn't have attention span to think about anything else. And after almost a year in Russia after the war, I was really burnt out. And the first year I moved here, I was in a very bad mental state for a while.
In those difficult times, she found support in the queer community formed in Georgia by people who had fled Russia. They established Kvira Queer Space, a safe zone where members can express themselves freely and organize events. That's where the interview is also taking place. Despite all of this, the queer community continues to immigrate, where those who remain, as Anya puts it, are the most vulnerable.
Queer people moved from here and keep moving, and the community is shrinking. And like the people who stay here, well, I'm deeply involved in the community, so it influenced me like through all this. Like people who stayed here are most like undefended category because they likely they stayed because they don't have money to move anywhere else. I deeply care about them that you ran from one homophobic clause just into another homophobic clause and you're like locked into the cycle.
Despite these feelings, Anya is thinking about leaving the country. When the first homophobic law was passed, she realized she could no longer continue being a drag queen in Georgia. The decision was clear. She would move to Spain.
My girlfriend decided, okay, let's move to Spain because like LGBT got banned at this point, and I thought, no, I won't be a drag queen here. So yeah, and we gathered everything. We like dropped our flat and so on. We gathered our things, and my girlfriend left, and I went to Armenia to wait for the visa, and I never got it.
Anya's wishes are simple: to live in a country with freedom of speech, where the LGBT community is not subjected to repression.
I would stay here, I think, for a longer time, but when the first law dropped, I knew that I couldn't, because if I'm not outspoken about this, then why did I move from Russia?
Former advisor to Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and founder of Alik Media Arsen Kharatyan was supposed to travel from Tbilisi to Yerevan on September 18, the day before he was scheduled to arrive in Tbilisi from Europe. However, after being held for 4 hours at the airport, he was turned away. Kharatyan, who has lived in Georgia for some time, says there was no explanation given.
My understanding is it probably has to do with several factors. One of the factors is the fact that our organization, Alik Media, has not registered as a foreign agent in the country. Second could be related to some of the civil society organizations that we have very close ties with, and we've been helping some of them find or register in other places outside of Georgia, but I don't have any clear, specific understanding of why this happened.
This wasn't the first time it happened to him. Just a week earlier, he had been detained for hours at the same airport, and he is not alone in this. In 2023, journalist and writer Viktor Shenderovich was denied entry. A year later, Russian activist Max Ivantsov was also barred from returning. Other similar cases involved Czech and Belarusian journalists, and in 2025, Regina Jegorova-Askerova, a Lithuanian human rights defender who had lived in Georgia for 15 years, was denied entry.
Democracy in Georgia is degrading. And we see the other laws and regulations. We saw the Georgian version of FARA, which was just passed this past week, which means we should probably expect more repressive approach on civil society and free speech in general. This is a speculation at this juncture because we haven't seen the law being applied up until this point. But I think in general, this has to do with the overall level of democracy and fundamental freedoms in the country. And it's not just me, as you rightly mentioned. There are several journalists, there are members of different international organizations, foreign funds who were denied entry. I have met some of them here in Armenia as well. And I also see that some of our colleagues, mostly the donor organizations, are also getting more and more cautious. Some of them are also moving their operations to Armenia to Eastern Europe or to the Baltics.
The laws passed in Georgia's parliament, along with the protests in Tbilisi demanding a pro-European future, impact not only Georgia, but the entire region.
Generally saying, besides the issue with the journalists, it's also a problem when you have a neighboring country that has a European course, that has a pro-Western course, on the level of formal announcements or institutional level where Georgia has the European integration being part of its constitution or a priority in the constitution. However, the government takes actions that are not necessarily very much fitting or matching the European values or the Western values. So in this respect, of course, we are quite concerned that it can have a larger impact on the region, not just, again, for the journalists, but also for the overall development of the region in the future.
For a time, Georgia was seen as a safe space for journalists and activists from neighboring Azerbaijan who were facing repression under Aliyev's regime. But that perception changed dramatically after Afgan Mukhtarli, an investigative journalist, disappeared from Tbilisi in 2017, only to reappear the next day in an Azerbaijani prison. His abduction shocked the regional civil society. According to Jam News, in 2023, 41 Azerbaijanis were deported from Georgia, the highest number among all deported foreigners that year. The deportation continued today. Since April 2024, Georgia's Ministry of Internal Affairs has been publishing monthly reports on deportation figures and country of origin. While the reports lack exact breakdowns, they mentioned Azerbaijani citizens being deported 7 times in 11 months. The ministry states that some of those deported were involved in antisocial behavior or violation of administrative law. Azerbaijani journalist Uzeir, name changed for safety reasons, says he no longer feels safe here. Although Uzeir says he loves the country and doesn't want to leave, he has also never seen Georgia as his final destination. Now he is considering moving to Europe because returning home is not an option. Georgia is no longer the safe haven it once was, especially for activists, queer people, and journalists. But they stay, resist, and remind us that the fight for freedom has no borders.